Hey guys, it's Chris again. Today we're going to do a really comprehensive look at the general setup, and it's one of these options here on the settings screen. So I wanted to at least show you guys the settings screen because I would say 95% of this is really important for you to review. There's a lot here, so sometimes especially kind of leave it as a default in the system and kind of wait for a scenario to arise when you're like, oh, okay, like I need to double check some settings, and you'll start to learn as you go. Another good tip is to turn on your verbose tooltips. So a lot of the time you're going to see little question marks next to things. And if you hit your name at the top right and go down to manage account, which is, it's kind of important to know that these are, for all staff profiles. It's all going to look the same. So this is not business related, it's staff profile related. So as long as I have a staff account, they're going to see generally what I see too. I think it's pretty similar for the customer as well in these settings. So at the bottom left, you'll see show tutorial video hints. And the default that we can set is temporarily, which means that they'll kind of fall off at some point. It says a couple of weeks. I would not suggest that. I would suggest keeping it on all the time and just doing verbose. So you'll get the most wordy version of the explanation that Momence has in there, and then minimize is like super small. It's like little hints and stuff. So we're just going to do verbose, and it was already there, so we don't need to save it. And let's jump back to our settings screen and talk about some of the options that you're going to have here. You have things that are like related to the business. So however you want the business to operate is kind of where a lot of this stuff comes into place. So for example, hourly rates, pay rates, how you want the memberships to function. Like if you have failed payments and retries, where's the setting for that? It's here in membership settings. So sometimes it's kind of difficult to know exactly where to go unless we, walk through it a bit. So we're going to start with the most basic, and that's general setup. But there are some important toggles there here that we want to make sure line up with our business choices. We got the basics here, of course, like your host name, your host email, which is not the same as what you're necessarily the same as what you're sending out emails with transactional templates, any sequencing. So just keep that in mind. Can be a different email. You have your host phone number, the currency, the industry, the checkout language default, the country, your website, which is important to put in there, and then your Instagram you can put in there too. And then, of course, we have our tracking. So Google Tag Manager, Meta Conversions API token, and Meta Pixel ID. You're at least going to have one of them. So just put whatever you have. And then we have some customer setup questions. And this is where those verbose tooltips really come in handy because I'm not going to remember all this either, right? So I'm like looking at that, I need a reminder. Show checkbox next to customer waiver. That sort of makes sense. If you turn this on, customers will have to explicitly accept the waiver each time when they make a booking. The customers will be asked to accept the waiver by checking a box digitally when making a booking. So if you were to make your customers do that, where they have to check a box every time they want to book, that's where you do it. All right, so then we have enable real signatures for waivers and accounts. That's just so that they can use their finger to sign on their phone or on their iPad. Require custom fields when staff create new customer accounts. So we'll cover custom fields because it's actually really useful, especially when it comes to forms that you might want to build. So for this, it says if you turn this on, then all the staff that needs to create a profile on the fly, like a front desk person, for example, they have to also fill out the custom fields that normally you would just have in a different place for the customer or the lead for the customer. So we don't really need to worry about this for us. It's just a sandbox account. Automatically generate self-checking keys. This doesn't matter if you turn it on or off because it's kind of like nice to have, but it's not going to mess anything up if you have this toggle on. So basically, you can make little checking keys where they can use their phone and they can scan themselves in. Pretty handy. Always show customers the option to book for their children. So if you do have a studio that is accepting underage people, you probably have some rules around how, like, are the kids allowed to book themselves? Should the parent always do that? Can everybody have that option in the system? Like, is it common enough where the parent might have to do that? So you could just have, always show the customers to book for their children, and they can do all that stuff for them. That might be a little bit different, like a dance studio or like a martial arts studio where they have, younger kids in there. But I work mainly with Pilates studios and gyms. All right, so where are we? Send transactional emails in my time zone instead of the customer's time zone. It's pretty easy to understand. Preview a customer before redirecting to their profile when searching. I don't think this is on by default. I love this feature. So what it does is, like, let's say I got Hans here, and I open it up once from search bar, and like from a lot of other places, I can just kind of click on his name and it'll have this appear, which is a really quick way to get away from it, because maybe I did it by mistake. But if I click on that and I have, some basic information, I might actually see more information. If you had visits and things like that, it would be here. Then I can open up a real customer profile from here. To me, it's way better just to have that one extra kind of, I don't know, like an obstacle where you don't go to their profile necessarily. All right, so preview, I suggest you turn it on. It's cool. Allow customers to book overlapping classes and appointments. I don't know why a lot of people would have that, but it does make sense in some use cases. So, think where it's like sort of an open gym setting and you need like they need to be in two places at one time. So that it overlaps. So like maybe I'm taking a class, but I also need to be able to take an appointment. And you can read that too. If this is turned on, the system will not block customers from booking a class or appointment that takes place at the same time as a class or appointment that they already have booked. Right. So I don't want that. And then we have some cancellation credit customers, how they receive it when they cancel a non-creditable booking. So that's kind of a tricky one. So it says a non-creditable booking is a booking that cannot be credited back to a subscription or a pack. So it's a different setting that you would have in that that class, this one-off. And in those scenarios, it says you can choose to either have the customer receive one class appointment credit or the equivalent that they paid for the booking in money credits. And I don't know if Momence has changed this, but we always do equivalent with money credits, because if you have it equivalent in class appointment credits, most of the time that's not going to work, because what it does is it has this credit that's usable by an appointment or class, which we know a class is going to be way cheaper than almost any appointment that you would have. So, you might have this $100 session, private session, and then you have this $20, $25, $30 class, but they can use it for either one. So it doesn't make sense, right? If they were able to book appointments that way. So we always keep this as equivalent in money credits. It's when they make the profile too, but if you wanted to ask for the phone number at the checkout and sign up, you probably want to do that. I wouldn't suggest keeping the phone number optional. And then here's what it's going to ask them to do. And so you're going to say, what is your phone number? But like I said, that actually doesn't really need to be there. It's because it's when they create their profile anyway. So you're generally going to have phone numbers in the system. Ask customers for their birthday at checkout and on sign-up pages. You do want that on because you need to have their, well, I don't know, maybe it's not important for your studio, but most of the time, I want their birthdays because I want to know if they're of age, of course. And I just want to have their birthday in the system. Like I want to send them a birthday message. So this one's kind of funky because Moments kind of defaults to this year. So a lot of the time you'll see like 0-year-old people in the system, which isn't super great. So you have to make it clear to make sure. So I might put something like, please use your real birth year. Okay. Cool. So I would do that. And then you can make the birthday optional. And if you do have all your age restricted classes here, you could turn that on too. Or we could just ask the birthdays for the children accounts. But, like 16 years old or whatever, they might be trying to do it themselves and the mom gives them the credit card. So I don't know. I just want to have people that are 18 and up. So this is staff commissions. So if we toggle this on, it means that when anybody's logged into an account, so wouldn't suggest having a shared profile that everybody uses at the front desk. Not a good idea. Everybody needs to be logged into their own account. Once you have this here, it means that maybe you have like this commission structure and it's important for you to know who's selling what. In point of sale, I think I need to save that. So MP it. Let's see if it works here. Okay, cool. So this is me logged in as staff. So it's the same thing that a front desk might see. So who is selling? And then I can pick actually anyone. So this is a good scenario for like a shared profile, but still, I wouldn't suggest doing that. I would just pick myself, right? So I'm Chris Cannon here. Cool. And then I do my sale. All right, so we'll leave that on. And then we have require a note when making a sale through the POS using a custom payment method. Keep that on. You probably are just not going to have people choose custom payment method. But if you were in a situation where somebody needed to pick one, an example of that might be, you're coming off of a migration, but previously you were using Square to handle a lot of payments. You need to sometimes reconcile from that with the custom payment method, but you need to have a note attached to it to kind of make sure. Or maybe you don't, right? But I would suggest that. Enable paying payment plans with custom payment method. Probably are not going to see this too much, but you might have two separate payment systems, right? So maybe there's some sort of what do they call those? Like the payment plan, payment processors that will allow them to pay like 4 payments. But Momence has this capability, but maybe you want to run it off of something different. That would be a custom payment method where you kind of need this to be an option, right? I think. I've never used it, but I'm just taking a good guess at that. All right, so then we have our convert prices to local currency. Just, most of the time it's off, and then we have this option to allow people to, or not allow, force people to pay these credit card fees. I don't really do this stuff, but if you wanted to pass the cost on of the transaction fees to your customer, you could do that here. And what's even cooler is you can do percentage. Like you don't have to do a full, 100% of all the fees. I just give it to them, or maybe you want to, or maybe you decide to do 50% instead. So it's like kind of equal. I don't do that. So I'm going to keep that off. And then we have a set customer fee cap. So let's hover over that. And it says you can specify a maximum limit on the fee that can be passed on the customer. So it's like, maybe I might say there is a $3 transaction fee. I don't know what you would say there. But we have this percentage here, this thing that we can cap. I don't know why it would be any different though if this is in percentage. And then we have absolute, so with this dollar amount, and then we have both. I haven't really looked at this too much, to be honest with you. So we have both here. The customer payment fee cap as percentage, customer payment fee cap in currency. Okay, so I got a little confused there. This is covering, and this is how much the customer. Okay, so I need to have this on, and then I don't know. I'm a little confused here. I'll have to come back to this and test it out. You probably don't even have this in your account, but we have some healthcare provider codes. We have our miscellaneous account settings, and we can enable prices to be prorated for courses. So maybe a scenario there is that you have a teacher training, but they missed one of the classes and you allowed them to come in. We could prorate that for them. Enable prices to be prorated for semesters, kind of the same concept. I generally don't work with semesters though, but it is cool. Maybe I should dive into it more. We can block a card in cash booking if the balance is unpaid. So if they have some sort of unpaid class in the account, then we won't take their cards anymore. I've never seen anybody have any of these turned on, by the way. Enable gift card purchase notifications. Maybe this one actually. Okay, so this is actually just notifications to us. Yeah, we wouldn't want that on. That'd be too many. And then we also have this feature. And actually, I remember when this was added to these settings because it was important for one particular owner. And so basically what happened, I was working with them and I said, like what they wanted to have happen was for them to have a fully custom checkout experience. And that's a little difficult and a little expensive to build out. So what they wanted was a thank you page, which makes a lot of sense. Like you would actually want the ability to be able to route to a thank you page that's a URL that you own, because then you just have your tracker live there and you kind of know when these things are hit, the pages are hit, and then you can come back and grab more information from that and do stuff with it. Right. So pretty useful. So you could also, on top of that, you can make the thank you page more important. Like it's actually another way to capture a sale because maybe you have some upsells there and immediately when they purchase something, it goes and tells them, make sure you check out our appointment packages or private session packages. Maybe we have an upcoming event. Make sure you check this out. So that's a pretty cool feature. All right. So then we have this collecting customer birthdays, this one's always kind of strange because we saw it up above where it was in that birthday question, but it's actually kind of the same thing. So I haven't really worked with this too much, but apparently you can set a maturity sequence. So I guess at a certain point, they will hit an age where I guess they can make different decisions for themselves, like we're considering them an adult. So it says the setting will create a predefined sequence. Once a child of any customer reaches a specified age of maturity, system will create a staff task to remind you of their account conversion. It's kind of cool, actually. But I don't know where you change. I don't know where you change the stages of that. I don't know. This is nice to have where you just have a different label for somebody that's their birthday. So you can even just have it as this. And so on the class roster, it'll look like just a little emoji and it has, the blowing the thing. If you make that white and then you just have one emoji there. And then this is the time zone that you want the studio to have, even if if I have this toggled on, then it lets the customer switch between their studio and their local checkout time. I probably wouldn't have that on for most use cases. So I'm going to leave this off. And then this here means that in my manage account, if I come down to my time zone again, you can see here I have listed as the default Eastern time. So if I take this off and I save it, and I come back to what the studio time is here, then it's going to actually match the time zone of the host always. But if they have it set up where they have this default, it doesn't matter. Like they're going to actually see other ones. At least that's what I've noticed. All right, so that's settings, everyone. And thanks for being patient with me and watching the video. And make sure to like and subscribe and all that stuff. And I'll see you on the next video, which I think we might cover membership settings, or we might cover, I don't know. I guess we'll see when we get there. All right, thanks, guys.